How I met Pablo Gonzales is similar to how he meets most people, by putting himself out there. Networking would be an understatement. Pablo is perpetually making connections on a whole nother level. He's not just swapping business cards or linking on social media. Pablo is fascinated with every person he meets, learning from their expertise, but also learning about their goals and aspirations. Pablo is not just making connections. In many cases, he's making actual content. This chief executive connector hosts a podcast with the same name, and he is creating communities and conferences designed to take this connection concept even further. My connection with Pablo was instantaneous. With similar career paths, taste in music, and a love for Publix subs, we hit it off immediately. This native Floridian even found a common love of surfing while living in Huntington Beach. Now hitting the waves in Jacksonville, Pablo brings an energy and a synergy to every room he enters. That presence manifests itself with each new connection he makes. But these opportunities and connections only revealed themselves when Pablo learned to step outside his comfort zone and engage in the process. It's not easy at first, but he will be the first to tell you the more reps you put in, the easier it gets. And when you do, the universe conspires to answer your dreams. I was fascinated to hear all the ways that these manifestations continue to happen for him. Listen to these stories and a whole lot more when I had a chance to connect with the networking ninja, Pablo Gonzales.
Chicken tender stuff. Having that bag right there? Is that what you're talking about? That second half of the chicken tender stuff I'm about to crush.
You just nailed it. Yeah, dude, that's exactly.
What do you put on your chicken tender sub, dog?
Lettuce, tomato, oil and vinegar, banana peppers.
Banana peppers.
Yeah,
strong. I do pickles.
Yeah, pickles too. Yeah, I do banana peppers and pickles and oil and vinegar, and yeah.
I go honey mustard,
Oh, I didn't even
pepper
think
jack
to add
cheese,
that.
the chicken, then buffalo sauce. Then I go lettuce, tomato, pickles, and then the sub sauce that they have. That's like a mixture of like oil, vinegar, and like
oil,
oregano.
vinegar
bro.
mix. Yeah.
It's the promo to do it. Just
Dude,
whenever
that is over the top with the buffalo sauce too. Oh
It's
my
the
god.
bomb, bro.
Oh man. Well, this is the place for it, man. Florida's home of Publix,
bro.
dude.
Publix.
It's funny, you never think of a grocery store as having like the best sandwich in town, but
Dude, when I lived in California,
just don't go anywhere else.
I missed people and Publix.
On that note, this is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Pablo Gonzales.
What's up, Nate?
How are you, my man?
I couldn't be better, man. This is my favorite thing to do.
I can't believe it, dude. It's what you do is how we met. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I saw you hanging out at a bowling alley. And when I see somebody, it was a networking event, right? Like we're at a conference. We're at
Oh, this is
First of all, it was a high-class bowling alley.
It's a very high-class bowling alley in Disney on the second floor,
Yeah, and
with VIP status.
Bowling penthouse, son.
Yeah.
And I saw you hanging out. So it's a networking event put on by
Yeah.
Buzzsprout, who invited us to Podfest. We're at a podcasting conference.
Podfest 2020.
Which is my favorite. This is such a great crowd of people because everybody here has some kind of like story, some kind of mission, some kind of big idea that they're trying to get into. They all have a voice,
So
man.
true. It's like all those personal development, like a Tony Robbins seminar. Everybody's got that vibe going, and just the room is buzzing.
Yeah,
It's
room
pretty
is
neat.
buzzing.
Pretty neat.
And we're at this opening night networking event put on by our hosting platform. I saw you sitting by yourself. And I know that people at networking events that are sitting by themselves are generally looking for company, man. So I just walked up and I said, hey, man, you want some company?
It's so funny because I had just barely sit down for what it's worth, and I'm sitting here trying to think about, okay, well, I don't know one single person in this room. How am I going to break that ice and get that going? And thankfully, you showed up, and then it got crazy from there. Like the whole night just went nuts.
We got buck wild.
I ended up booking another guest based off of who all we were hanging out with, Ali. So
Ali's the man.
We'll be talking to him later on too.
So listen, just something to take home is that you're never alone in that situation when you're at a networking event. There's always other people that are sitting there thinking, God, I hope I'm not the loser that doesn't know anybody else. And how am I going to start a conversation? So anytime you see somebody, like every networking event has somebody floating around that's like walking, looking like they're going somewhere, but they've crossed the room like 3 or 4 times, and it's obvious that they're just like, too
Not
embarrassed to just
ready
talk to somebody.
Yeah.
There is always somebody sitting at a table by themselves. There's always something like that. Those people, if you introduce yourself to them, you create amazing relationships, because creating relationships is about adding value to people's lives, right? Like that'll bond you to somebody if you can add some value to someone's life. And if you solve that little problem for somebody right off the bat, they're generally pretty grateful. And you meet amazing people.
That was exactly the case for me. That was exactly what happened. I was grateful to, and then like I said, once that initial meeting we finished up eating, then it was just like I said, we went wild from there. But
yeah, so when I'm teaching people how to network, it's all about getting that first rep in, right? Like it's all about breaking the ice with the first person, so that you don't, you get out of your own head and you do it. So when you're a couple of like the icebreaker things is, number one, look for that floater person. Look for that person that's like on their phone. They're not really on their phone. They're just embarrassed, right? So just talk to them. But also, when you're walking into a networking event, you're generally walking in with other people. Just be like, hey, you going to this thing? What's up? I'm Nate, Or there's always a line at registration. When you're at registration, I always see people like down on their phone waiting to like check in. It's just like, dude, just talk to the person in front of you or behind you, and you get that rep in, and you break that ice, and then you're much more comfortable, and you're walking in with somebody else. Or at a bar line, there's always a line. There's always somebody walking around by themselves. There's always someone at a table by themselves. Pick one.
Well, I've been volunteering at some of the registration stuff too, and it's given me that opportunity. Once it was really cool because you kind of helped get that ball rolling for me, because it definitely didn't necessarily feel natural. Once I got into registration and helping people out, it was kind of like that was your opportunity to talk to every single one that came up and have a conversation with everybody. So it was like you had no excuse not to.
Some low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. So. But that's cool, because that's kind of like, that's what you do. Let's talk about like your background and what you do, like what you got coming up and what you're working on.
Yeah, man. So I've been in construction for 15 years prior to what I'm doing now. And I started off in this executive and training thing that moved me out to California, became a green building expert. And then 2009, moved back to Miami to start my own green building consulting company. And that coincided with getting an email from one of my best friends that Habitat for Humanity was looking to start a young professionals group. This is like 2010. And I showed up at someone's living room. We started this young professionals group, and that got me on this path of getting involved with and starting young professional groups. And doing that, being in the world of philanthropy, forces you to be at networking events. There's always an event. Yeah, and in the young professional scene, it's usually just networkers. Like, it's usually just like you're organizing these like meetups and networkers and whatever. Unbeknownst to me, I set off on this path that's really added a lot of value to my life, right? Like it taught me to be a really good public speaker, because once you start organizing a committee, then you got to get up in front of a crowd and you got to introduce people. And at a certain point,
you're almost kind of emceeing.
You do a lot of emceeing. Yeah, you host like panels and you do this, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh man, like if I am representing a charity, I can go talk to the mayor.
Right. You can get some of those audiences that you might not normally be able to get.
Yeah, and that's cool. And that's the big thing that has set me on this mission that you can business develop through community creation. And it started, I started these young professional groups. At the time, I was the director of sustainability for a big builder, and I felt that I was pigeonholed at a certain point, and that people just thought I was like the green guy that didn't really care.
Wasn't really a construction guy, he was more the green guy than
Yeah, I was just like a satellite in their world. I wasn't on a path anywhere, and I wanted to become more valuable to the company. And at a certain point, my CEO got invited to speak on a panel about smart cities for the Economic Development Agency of Miami. At last minute, he doesn't want to go, so they're like, send Pablo. So Pablo shows up, and I share this panel with the head of the Smart Cities Initiative for like the World Bank. Wow. I don't know if it's World Bank. It's like World Bank, International Monetary Fund, one of those international development banks, like
big guru
hoity-toity.
guys, right.
The head of Latin America for Cisco Systems, and your boy, right? Like I'm just
Wow.
like 32 years old. I
That's
just show up
cool.
like, hey guys. And I just get on that stage. At this point, I'm really comfortable being on panels, and I just spit.
Doing your thing.
I'm doing my thing. I mean, I know how sustainability fits into smart cities. It's what I do, right? So I do my thing, and when I get off the stage, for the first time in my life, I had a line 6 people deep waiting to talk to me.
Wow.
And it just blew my mind,
Yeah,
right?
what an ego booster, right?
Super ego booster. And, 3 of them were like vendors thinking that I'm some big thing in my company, which I wasn't, trying to sell me something. 2 of them were guys that were like, hey, man, I've been looking for a guy like you. Like, what's that kind of going to take? And another one was just like a young man. I'm still really good friends with Will. That was just like, hey, man, I love what you said, and I'm looking to like kind of do more of this stuff. But it was this big aha moment of when you're on stage and someone sees you for the first time and you're on that stage and they're in the audience, the brain rationalizes, well, this guy must be something important.
Right, there's a level of
Yeah.
it's like just like a band being on stage. There's that certain amount of stardom, I guess.
Correct.
Maybe, yeah.
And you can extrapolate that to like you see someone on TV and you're like, oh, they must be famous.
Right.
And now we have our phones, and it's like if you're listening to someone on a whoever's listening to me right now, if they meet me later, they're gonna be like, dude, I listened to you for 45 minutes. Like the brain does that,
yeah,
right?
that's great.
When I'm just
That's
a regular person living an extraordinary life.
It's so true. It's so true, man. I'm telling you. Just
Right?
ordinary people. Like I find that to be the case every single time. And the more I say it, and the more I go through this process, it's like, no, you don't understand like how ordinary they really are. Like, it's one thing to say, but like, they're buying the same Pop-Tarts, dude. They're like, really, it's so exactly the same. And we want to put them on that pedestal, and it's just not. That's not who they are.
Yeah, and listen, we like our brain has been proven that it's not that we don't. Our conscious brain is a very small part of the equation, right? Like our brain justifies what we feel and see and whatever after the fact, very quickly after the fact. So you think that it's your decision making that's doing it, right? So this stage effect is real, and I'm like, all right, man, if it was so valuable for me to be on stage, who can I put on a stage that I could add value to their life strategically for me? So my next move was I reached out to this developer that was doing this project in a like rich area of Miami, and
Like a development project.
yeah, like
construction?
a high rise.
Yeah, I got you.
A high rise in this like single family high income area of Miami, right by University of Miami. But
Right.
I knew that being built on top of the metro rail station, that this is something called transit oriented development, and they're paying extra tax credits in order to build less parking to incentivize public transportation, which is something Miami desperately needed.
Absolutely.
So I reach out to this developer and I tell him, listen, I know what you're doing here. I really like this project. I want to have an event about transit-oriented development and the need for public transportation in Miami, and I'm going to put you on stage with a politician on the board of one of my charities and a land use attorney that is into this type of stuff, and I want to interview you guys about what transit-oriented development is, and you can talk about your project, and I'm going to invite my young professionals of Miami so that they're educated on this stuff.
And again, that's like a win-win-win-win. It's a win for the young professionals. It's a win for the guy that's needing to establish a relationship with the politician. It's a win for the politician to give him an audience with it. I mean, it's like everybody's coming out ahead. In that.
Win for the city, win for me to share the stage with a bunch of cool people.
and you getting to put the whole thing together. I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so no ask, right? I just do this event, like 18 people show up, cool little event. The next week in the office, like, hey man, are you guys gonna bid on this project, $60 million? And I'm like, boom, all of a sudden I went from being like the hippie sustainability guy to the business developer.
Yeah, right,
brought in
because
a
you
project.
brought a big deal to the table. I mean, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, so huge aha moment, and that's when I still didn't have the language for it, but that's when community creation for business development thing really starts hitting me, and what I start realizing, it's like, okay, the key to all of it is a stage. If you can have an audience and you can have a stage where you can provide value to an audience, that's a win-win for the people on the stage and the people in the audience, and for me, then that is a win-win-win-win-win that everybody loves.
I never really would have thought about it like that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, man, so I come upon this truth. And from there, I'm just like, all right, cool. Now I'm a business developer here, but I was never really passionate about construction. I wanted to do other things. And on another level, I had reached this plateau in Miami where I knew 1 to 3 people in every single room that I walked into. So, I'm kind of plateaued, right? And I was looking for an opportunity to diversify myself outside of that market where it wasn't just all my influences.
It's the same problem I feel like, where it's like you've exhausted the resources in your immediate surroundings, and now you've got to reach above and beyond that.
And my boss, who was the VP of Business Development, was like, my income hasn't really gone up in 10 years. I was like, I'm out. So I'm just like, I don't want to be stuck for 10 years feeling like, if that's the case, then I can disappear for 5 and come right back. No big deal.
Right. Who's going to miss me, right?
So I just kind of, and everything I was doing, I was just talking about like all these beliefs that I had and all these different ideas and just putting it out there for free. And at some point, Hurricane Irma is bearing down on Miami. I decided to get out of the city and go up to Jacksonville. And I get holed up with this guy that had software for Amazon sellers that he was looking to pivot. And as I'm telling him my beliefs on this stuff, he's like, man, like I'm really in need of a business development guy like you because I'm going to make this pivot and this and that. And I have this event coming up. I was like, dude, I love events, man. You need some help with it? Like, you want an MC? Do you want a keynote?
Right. What can I do, right?
Yeah.
How can I help?
Add value, bro.
Right.
So
once again.
So he's like, dude, you do that for me? Yeah. This is like September. His event's in December. And between September and December, we worked out a deal where it's just like, all right, man, if you're really on board for this, like I got a 1-year contract and some equity in the company to come be the VP of Business Development for like a startup software company at this point.
Cool. Yeah, and it's exciting too, right? Like
that's exciting. I mean,
entrepreneurship.
Do you know how much cooler I felt telling people that I'm like VP of Business Development for a startup software company than I'm like construction guy? Cool.
So true.
A lot cooler.
Yeah, right.
So fed my ego.
Again, once feeding that ego.
I'd also, since coming back from California, I love surfing. I've been living in Miami for 10 years where I'm like surfing 12 to 15 times a year and killing myself to do it.
And you started surfing in Huntington Beach, or you were surfing in
Beach?
Yeah,
no,
okay, yeah,
Huntington,
nice.
Bro, like where I lived in Huntington Beach and
How
not
can
surfing.
you not surf?
It's
That
like
would be a
living ski
crime.
and ski out in Aspen and not getting a pair of skis. So
should be illegal.
Yeah, and Jacksonville is this like little gem for surfing also, right?
Oh,
on the East
too,
Coast.
Man. Yeah.
So I jump on the opportunity, man. I blow it up. I quit my job. I take this opportunity, and as soon as I get on board, I realized I jumped onto a burning ship, right? Like I was so excited by the whole, like how much cooler I was going to be that I didn't really do my due diligence. And for the first time in my life, I went against my dad's best advice.
Interesting.
Which was a really weird position to be on, right? Like and I'm still out on this limb, right? Like my dad, So I do it. And when I get to the company, I realize, okay, this guy has just had a really big, the founder, had just had like a big public argument with his number one affiliate, who is kind of the person that brought in like half of his customer base. And he had this really public
ship kind of thing.
Yeah, that happened. The software that he was talking about pivoting, he had been talking about pivoting for 2 years and it hadn't materialized. And 2 weeks after I got there, the head developer quits. And then a month later, a competitor comes on board that's one-to-one our product that used to be one of our customers that partnered with this affiliate that just like divorced from him.
Yeah.
So we go from 500 users to 300 users my first 2 months as VP of Business Development. Not a good look for your boy. And I had this whole document that I created. That was like my first 30 days, 30 to 90 days.
Like a plan.
90 to 180, 180 plus of stuff that I wanted to do that revolved around creating these like events to connect people and have panels.
Yeah,
that
like
budget,
what you were doing. Yeah, like your thing.
Yeah,
right?
that budget's gone.
Oh, wow. So now you can't even do that.
So
you can't even do your job at this
And the
point.
software's not working, bro.
Oh, jeez.
So at the time, and this is the story I told last night, kind of like hurried, right?
Right.
So at the time, I'm just like, man, what can I do, right? Like, I don't have a budget. I don't have this. I can't do this. I looked at it, and I saw that our 12 highest paying subscribers to the software had made up at this point like 30% of our recurring revenue. So I'm like, we can't lose any of these guys, right? Like, I'm losing customers left and right.
Those guys are mission critical.
Those people are mission critical. And I remembered when I was like this green building expert in Miami without any other green building experts within 300 miles of me, like how lonely it felt and how much in my head I was all the time. So I reached out to these 12 people and I said, listen, guys, don't you feel alone in front of your computer screen, even though you got your VAs across the world? We want to, every other week, we're going to have this call that we want to have you on. And we're going to show up, give you a little bit of value of like what we're seeing or whatever kind of advice. And then we're going to just kind of workshop and like see if we can help each other out. It's a mastermind. I didn't know what a mastermind was back then. I just intuitively came to me. Right now I know that that's called a mastermind, and I still kind of cringe at that name of that. But
I know, yeah.
It is what it is.
That's kind of like that idea of summit company.
Yeah, man. So, like, we just start, like, we'll just show up to this call, and, like, we'll either talk about what we're seeing in the Amazon ecosystem, or I would just show up like, dude, I just read Never Split the Difference about negotiation, and this is what I learned. Let's do a little exercise.
Any kind of tidbit you can share to help people accomplish what
and
they're
then
trying
we
to
just
do.
be like, yo, Loretta, what are you struggling with, right? And she she would be like, oh, well, this is a real life example. And she'd be like, oh, man, my VAs keep quitting. And I'd be like, oh, dude, Kristen, you're really good with VAs. Do you have any advice? And just support group, right?
Yeah, doing what you were doing.
Doing what we're doing, man. And what I've learned in my obsession with human connection is like the two quickest ways to build a relationship with somebody is a shared vulnerability. If you and me went through the same struggle at some point,
Right.
you know, like
Relatability
anybody
thing,
that's a recovering alcoholic, immediately
Yep.
friends. Veterans, immediately friends.
Absolutely.
And or shared vulnerability, right? Like,
Right.
oh man, I was the dork in high school. Me too.
Right.
Not true, by the way. I was super cool.
Oh, I have no doubt about
Just
that.
kidding,
Yeah.
just kidding. I love saying
Mr.
that.
Personality, right?
I love telling people I was cool in high school. I really wasn't.
Yeah.
And
No, but weren't you voted like the funniest guy or something
yeah,
like that?
I did get voted
so-
funniest,
yeah.
but I tricked the system. Like this is part of my like audience like
Hack
tricks, right? Like
Hacked the high school.
yeah. So all right,
Popularity
goes back to
contest.
the power of the stage.
Yeah.
In high school, I got there, don't really have any friends. I'm new, but they had just launched like a news service. They went from morning announcements to like a fully produced TV morning
like when
show
they're having like your own
in-house,
like
and I
little
became the
reporters.
anchor.
Nice.
And then after that, I ran for class
Yeah, again, I'm not
offices.
surprised.
Then I was like MC of the pep rallies. Then blah blah blah. Eventually, I got cool. But the morning that we were all handing out the vote for senior superlatives, I was the one going homeroom to homeroom handing it out. And then giving the instructions, I'd be like, so yeah, this is what you got to do, blah, blah, blah. Guys, don't vote for me for best looking. It's going to break Alex Casabiel's heart. And everybody would be like, so then last thing that everybody thought was like, oh, Pablo's funny. I'll vote for him for
Right.
funniest.
So
Right?
who got voted for funniest?
Yeah,
Oh,
so-
Pablo just made me laugh. There you
Yeah,
go.
so it was a total like
Yeah.
hack, right? Like it was
Nice.
it was totally like I have a
Brilliant, though. I
stage,
love it. Yeah.
whatever. So anyways,
And it's so you though. That's like
It's-
that's
Dude,
perfect.
I've been
Say
doing
what
this
you
shit my
think.
whole life,
Yeah.
bro. Like my
Say what you
sister,
want.
if you talk to my sister right now, she has been railing against the idea that people like me more than they should her whole life.
like that Ferris Bueller kind of thing. Like
My brother calls me Ferris Bueller.
not
Right?
at all surprised.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
perfect analogy.
Yeah,
for
so he
sure.
would call me Ferris Bueller. I
sure.
more self-identify as Ace Ventura, but
Yeah.
that's neither here nor
Well,
there.
that's that. I can see that too. Absolutely. So, what does a perfect day look like for you, or an ideal everyday day look like for Pablo?
Dude.
if you could be doing anything.
The last 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
this, right?
just get me in a room full of people and let me make friends with everybody and making friends with each other. That's all I love to do, man. For
And you-
and then surfing.
And you get to do a pretty good bit of that too. Like you've hit a couple of these. There's some really cool events that you're
Yeah, man. So
constantly networking.
in this journey of building up this business, man, I have made it, mission critical for me to be able to go to conferences and do this. Because when people see this, then they really believe in my ideologies because they're like, okay, it works. So what my business has evolved to has become a kind of like a derivative of this like mastermind concept, but using content and creating different groups within customer bases to join people and then drive them to some kind of like live interaction. And when people see how intuitively good I am at connecting to people and connecting people to each other, then they buy in, right?
Yeah.
And when I left this, so with this software company, mastermind starts. 3 months later, they're all best friends. So I'm like, okay, how can we do this live in person? We invite them down to Panama, and we tour the Panama Canal. I take them salsa dancing, and we do I do a SWOT analysis for everybody, and I give them a structure to present their business.
Brilliant.
And that's
some
what-
structure and some
Yeah.
homework to go
Yeah.
with the warm fuzzy stuff too.
Yeah, yeah. So they do it. We realize there in these presentations that everybody's really good at one thing in their business. So we create this course about the business of e-commerce. And that's like our first fundraise that raises like about $100,000 for us to pay for the software. And then we have an event in Jacksonville 6 months later when we invite 9 of them, put them on stage in front of our customer base to
Nice.
to position them as experts, right? Like
Absolutely,
share the
yeah.
stage. And this whole initiative basically creates like $200,000 in revenue out of like thin air in like the worst case scenario of like everything that's happening in the company. And at the end of the year, I decided I no longer want to be part of this effort because my business partner and I just didn't see eye to eye on stuff. And in 2019,
Really?
yeah. So
Even though it was all kind of that mastermind, even though it's all kind of on that level of.
that was the only thing that was working, dude.
Really?
And
Because I can understand, like in say a plumbing business or something, you have some kind of disagreements. But when the business concept is so much in this vibe,
it was, but we were never aligned on direction. I realized that I had built this powerful vehicle on that side. he had his software that was his powerful vehicle and his like original audience that he had created. But the way to monetize that audience was that we were never in line with it. Right? Like so I don't want to make him seem like a bad person. You know, we just had disagreements.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so I decided at the end of 2018 that I'm just like, well, this is not working for me. I want to kind of start from zero again. I've already been out on this limb. So I'm going to walk away and I'm going to figure it out. We're in Jacksonville. My wife has a great idea to take like a 90-day detox, which becomes I call it my 90-day purposeful pause.
Yeah, kind of like a self-evaluation,
yeah, man.
reassess.
Like, to get perspective on anything, you need distance.
For sure.
Right? Like, you can't see it if it's so close.
Oh, yeah, right. When it's right
so,
there.
brilliant idea by her.
I was going to say, what did that 90 days look like? I'm real curious.
Yeah, well, really anxious.
Yeah, right. A lot of anxiety. Sure.
Man, Western culture is all about action, bro.
Oh,
Like, power is action. Eastern culture has this concept that is inaction is the greatest form of power. Right? Like, if you purposely don't have to act, that's because you own it. Right? So, like, I got into that mentality, but during that time, I booked 4 conferences because I'm just like, dude, if I'm going to be in this stage, I want to be doing what I love doing, which is connecting,
doing this,
blah, blah, blah.
Hitting these types of shows.
Yeah, man. So, the first conference I go to is the Gary V 2021 conference. And
Gary V.
Yeah, my boy, right?
Yeah.
My boy. Gary, if you're listening, holla at your boy.
Both of us.
Both of us. So I show up to this conference, and it's like a 1.5-day long conference, and I walk away with like 25 new friends, but I'm looking around, and I'm just like, dude, almost everybody here is just talking to the same 4 people the whole time.
Yeah.
And before I left Miami, I gathered up my group of young professionals one last time, and I had given this speech about the value of networking and why everybody should do it and how to do it. So I start thinking, maybe I can be a speaker on these conferences because people need some advice on this because they haven't had the 10 million hours of reps that I've gotten.
Right. Well, and it's something that doesn't come natural or comes natural to almost nobody. I mean, nobody wants to just cold call, walk up to somebody, introduce yourself, and like have that,
Correct. And listen, as gregarious as I am, and as much as I like attention, it still wasn't easy for me, and it's just
it's just like you said, reps. It's
through reps.
Doing it. Yeah,
it's through reps, just like anything, right? So the next conference I go to is in Dallas, the Capitalism Conference, and I show up there saying, "Oh, I'm a public speaker about networking and." I want to be known as like the networking Sherpa of conferences and this and that. People are like, oh my God, this is brilliant. I like it. Everybody that I talked to is just like, this is super needed, except for the conference organizers. Just like,
right.
Yeah, you're not Joel Marion. You're not.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I got to redefine that. Next conference I go to is the 10X conference. And that thing's like a circus. I describe that thing like a Metallica arena concert has a baby with a Mexican flea market, right? So just wildly entertaining, but they're selling you shit all the time. It's just like, hey, come over here, Holmes. Like, but out of that conference, I realize, number one, the value of this, that value of the stage thing really hits home because basically they just like entertained you for 72 hours and you were like, bludgeoned to buy whatever they wanted you to because you were so entertained, right?
Right.
And then the last speaker, there's this guy, Pete Vargas, that talked about how you monetize a speaking career across multiple things. So it's not just about speaking fees. I was like, okay, I need to build that into my business model.
Yeah, like how you use speaking as almost like a platform to monetize in other ways.
Correct.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Correct. So I'm like, okay, I need to add this to my hat. The next conference I go to is Funnel Hacking Live. At this conference, I start introducing myself as a professional networker. And, like, once I'm saying I'm a professional networker, people are like, oh, yeah? What's up? Like, I want to talk to you, bro. And
nice.
that's the concept of...
And that's probably the truest definition.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, when you say that to people, they're like, so do you, like, charge people for introductions? I was like, that's what I always wanted to stay away from. At no point do I want to, like, yes, to be my friend, you have to pay this.
Right.
And to make you friends with other people, you have to pay that. That's because that takes away the whole, like, service of it. Right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, man.
But you got to figure out how to make a living, too.
You got to figure out how to make a living,
right? You got to pay the bills.
But I was committed to, like, not losing the genuine love for what I did, right? Oh, also at the Capitalism Conference, I learned that if you're going to build a business, you need to build a business around you doing something you love doing inside the business, or else go get a job.
Right. If you're going to be miserable, don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, because freedom isn't the ability to do whatever you want. Freedom is doing what you want to do.
Absolutely. So true.
Right?
God, it's a big difference, right?
Yeah. And
Huge difference.
Huge difference. So the professional networker thing, like, is another concept I like to talk about, which is it's much better to be a kingmaker than a king, right? Because everybody wants to be a king, so everybody wants to know a kingmaker, right? So
another great perspective, right?
Yeah. I'm telling you, this is 90 days of growth.
Nuggets, baby, nuggets.
Nuggets, dropping balls. Pam, 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 pam. So, and at Funnel Hacking Live, I learned all the different online monetization tricks.
Right. How to get those sales funnels, all that.
Yeah, the infopreneurship model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I learned that piece, and I kind of set off to start doing that. And I was just networking and getting introduced to people. And then at one point, I got introduced to this guy, Brendan Kane, by a friend of a friend, right? So, like, my buddy from college that none of my friends keep up with, only me, because I'm Mr. Want to be friends with everybody and whatever. And I love the guy. I genuinely Jeff Pies, I love you, bro. Right? Like,
legit, right?
Yeah. He's the man. He's like he's like a young Larry David. He's
awesome.
Really awkward Jewish funny guy. And so he's like, dude, do you remember my buddy Brendan that slept on my couch out in Santa Monica for a little while? Well, he's speaking around the world. You should talk to him. When I get on the phone with this guy Brendan, this dude is like the foremost expert in digital strategy in the world. But I don't really know who he is, and
you don't even realize who he is at the time.
I mean, I did a little bit of research. Like I knew that he was responsible for Taylor Swift's career and and Rihanna, and like all
had his book come out yet? The 1 Million Followers.
His book was out. Yeah, correct.
But you didn't know about it though.
I mean, I knew about it from looking at it, but I didn't know the impact. Right? Like
Gotcha.
I had no like concept of who he really was.
Right.
But I did my homework and I approached. He's like, well, listen, man, I just trying to figure out how to like get on stages. Thank you for taking my time. And my conversation with him ended up with just like him saying, listen, dude, I did something extraordinary. I don't know. That's how I'm on stages. I don't know what you got. I was like, fair.
Right.
So then I flipped it and I said, well, how can I help you? And he's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, what are you struggling with? And he's like, well, I'm kind of killing it.
Not much, but...
But if I could use some help with something is I'm really expensive and I want to help more people. So I want to like scale my impact and I want to create some kind
of... His speaking fees are super pricey and all that, whatever.
Dude, he's $1,500 a half an hour call.
Oh,
expensive,
nice. Yeah.
Right? So he'd get these $30,000-$40,000 contracts. He'd help really influential people, but like he wanted to help more people.
Yeah.
So really good place. And he's like, I've been trying to do this like group program, but I'm not really, I feel like I'm not doing it right because nobody's sticking around. So I was like, dude, this is exactly what I just did at this e-commerce company. And you got to create these two different groups that interact, right? So we had like the mastermind group and then our Facebook group, and the way that you leverage like recording these phone calls and then sharing that information inside that group and then creating that like value ladder of, how do I get to the cool club at the top of your customer ecosystem is the key to all of this. So he's like, he liked what I had to say, gave me a shot, build out a program for him.
No kidding.
Yeah, I worked with him for about 5 months, and then he decided to pivot another way, which is going to work better for him, which is great, right? But like we got it rolling.
But yeah, you got that.
And at that point, what I realized is the real value of what I created here is this like modularized content distribution system that creates relationships up and down the board within your clientele and your company and your network, which he didn't really need because he has a content team.
Right.
But a lot of other people are seeking that.
There's definitely a need for that.
And that's become my flagship product. Went from not knowing where I was going to be in 10 years to like figuring it out in 90 days who I want to be. I want to be the guy that proves community creation is the future of business development, and figuring out how to like implement what I love doing of connecting people to each other in it. That took me about 90 days to just get the language for it. Then it took me about 3 months to get my first customer. Then he was my only customer for about 3 months. I got paid to speak for the first time around that time. And then the last 3 months of the year, I ended 2019 with 6 clients, like 11K recurring revenue, and started 2020 with an actual company.
Right.
And now
things are actually starting to come.
Yeah. So now I'm
amazing.
like, bro, if I can grow from like 0 to 10K per month in recurring revenue in 3 months, then I think by the end of this year, I got to get to like 40K per month.
Yeah. Like what is a year look like from now? And then what's really cool is what does 10 years look like from now?
Correct.
That's so much what I try to spend time thinking about is like, based on this course, based on this path, based on where we're going, what does 10 years look like from now?
Yeah.
Man.
Well, what do you want? What is 10 years out? What's your dream 10 years out?
For me?
Yeah.
Very similar thing about the public speaking and about creating events. So my concept is how to get all this personal development content out there for free, bypassing all the people that are paying for what I consider a lot of times to be just a lot of fluff.
Yeah.
I want to get as much meat and potatoes out there as I can. That's worksheets. Like, I mean, the book that I'm writing, I mean, at the end of it has, worksheets, actions, questions to answer, where you actually write in the book. You fill it out, like almost like a workbook, if you will. But and then taking those things and creating momentum, creating change, getting people to start to create that lifestyle by design and get them going down that path. But so many people, I think an obstacle for them is the financial. I mean, you like these conferences. I mean, look at just what a creator pass was, $450 or something like that, 300. I forget how much it was. But
yeah, I'm here on scholarships. So
ridiculous, whatever they are. Me too. I got
that's right. Buzzsprout.
hookup. Well, what's funny is I got hookups through Buzzsprout and because of just working volunteering as well. I mean, that's again like the idea of committing to participating, and like I've actually missed a lot of the content that I was hoping to get because of participating and volunteering. But to me, again, that's creating those relationships. So, but anyway, to get back to your point, is to build an audience at the end of the day that enjoys these conversations and this kind of content, and then through the enjoyment of listening to this kind of stuff, inspire them to then go through that 8 keys process to create change in their lives and do it for free. If you like what we're doing, hey, buy a t-shirt, and buy the book. Again, with the book, I want it to be downloadable for free. I want access to it for free. But, hey, if you want a hard copy, you want a signed copy, hey, then pay me for that, because it's actual, something tangible.
So can I give you some advice?
Yes, please. Bring it.
You got to figure out your hook point. My hook points of like professional networker, proving that community creation is the future of business development, it's very easy to conceptualize and know why you want in on that. So figure out the hook point of what you want to be known for. That's the guy that's known for why. You know what I'm saying? Like figure out what you want to be known for. And then once you have that thing, try to figure out if that's going to take me 10 years to get there, what can I do right now to get there in 1 year? Right? What can I do? So guys like you, guys like me, because we're kind of on similar missions, right? I want to be a 25 to 50K public speaker.
Yeah.
And if I can do that 10 times a year, then everything else is a hobby, bro.
Yeah.
Or a passion project.
Right.
So what I've figured out for myself, number one, get that hook point. Get that thing that's like what you want to be known for, so that everybody name association for you.
Could it be lifestyle design? Is that?
It could be, but that's not very specific, right? Like lifestyle design already exists.
Right.
Or it could be lifestyle design through X or whatever, right? Like you design your lifestyle that you want by doing this that should be easily distilled into like 3-4 words, right? Like a quick sentence. And then after that, man, for you, once you figure that piece out, go hard at a TED Talk.
All right, yeah, that's what.
That's what I'm focusing on right now.
I don't remember if we talked much about the 8 Keys to Great, my website, with that. So is saying 8 Keys to Great, is that something specific enough, or is that more of like a process kind of thing that's too vague and too?
So I would say your hook point is something along the lines of build your life like you build your home.
Right.
That is tell me more.
Right.
So if you can, we may have solved it right now, bro.
I hope so, man.
Yeah, but that's how you got to think about it, right? Like I'm trying to teach people how to like build their life like you build a home.
Yeah. So my original tagline was remodel your life the way you remodel your home.
Yeah.
That was what my original.
So I think
8 Keys to Great tagline anyway.
Yeah, and then I've got the 8 keys to a great home.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, and then keep going down that analogy path, because then if you're just like, yeah, man, because you're home, like you need a roof because like you got to protect yourself from stuff, and then you need these like exterior walls to have boundaries, and then you also need like great air conditioning because you got to feel good inside. That like one hook point can get you into a narrative that then goes into a story, because people connect through stories. You want to do that in events like these so that you get people going with it, right? Yeah. And then it's go hard at like what you're doing. Book and TED Talk. Like I think podcast, book, TED Talk.
Right.
Probably not in that order, right? Like podcast first.
Right.
Because I think it's the lowest. Then be trying to land a TED Talk based on it while you're trying to publish a book. Because if you can get that in a year, man, like if you can land a TED Talk in a year, then that is a really quick path to getting paid speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
My original thing was TED Talk, but now it's just become create 4 to 5 talks, polished speaking points on certain topics and within that realm, and have those things ready to go. So when I get the opportunity, whether it be through a TED Talk or through some other speaking engagement, like, have that just spit polished and always ready to go kind of thing. So let me ask you this. You got any habits that you do that maybe most people don't do that has contributed to some of your success?
One of my weak points is discipline, man. So I struggle with routine, but what I've tried to find the correlation in the habits that I have that have brought me to success is 3 kind of abstract things. And it's, if you're looking for something, I mean, first you got to identify it.
Figure out what you're looking for.
I mean, the path to true success to me is a 4-step path, which is find out something that you're passionate about, that you're really good at. Then after you figure that out, figure out a way to serve others with that. Once you figure that out, figure out a way to monetize it in a genuine way. Once you figure that out, build a company around that. But to get there, I think the 3 things that I really do every day when I'm working on this stuff is every day I seek it. Every day I'm either listening to a podcast or an audiobook or I'm reading something about stuff that's going to get me there. And I think in this world, it's really easy to build that into your routine, right? Because you can always listen to the 30-minute podcast of the person who you're trying to become. For me, it's Gary Vee. I listen to Gary Vee every day, and I'm trying to be that dude, right? So then the next thing that I do every day is I announce it every day, man. Like, I talk to everybody I talk about. A day doesn't go by that I'm not like talking about how like human connection is the future and like valuing the other is going to save the world and community creation is the greatest thing that you can do for the world. You got to keep talking
the word.
And I still preaching the word. That's well said, right? And like I look back at like my transition point from like construction to here, and I spent a year just telling people I think this is it. Like I think this whole like events and blah blah blah, and eventually it shows up because you get known for it.
Right.
And then the third.
At first, you don't even necessarily know quite what it looks like, but you're headed down this new direction, this new path, and now it's starting to crystallize as you continue to go.
Yeah, man. And that can be the announcing. It can be social media. The announcing it can be person-to-person conversation, right? So like you're posting something about it, like this is what I found today, or like this is what I believe, or you're in these moments of like conversation, and then the third is iteration. The third is the reps. You're seeking it, you're announcing it, and then you got to continue to just evolve it, continue to go through those. And I think
all the baby steps.
Yeah, man.
Keep moving forward,
and I think those 90 days that I went through all these conferences was just like a bajillion reps, because I was just like, okay, this is kind of what I'm trying to do, and this is what I like, and I just talked to 100 people a day because I'm at a conference for nonstop.
Well, you have the opportunity to do it, to have that conversation over and over again.
Yeah, and then people will be like, oh, I like this, but I don't like that. Okay, cool. So next person I say it like this, and then next person I say it like this. And
it's evolving, and
it's iteration,
crystallizing your message through repetition. That's brilliant.
So those are the 3 things that I feel like I do every day, man.
If I did that more, then I probably would have a more crystallized vision with what I'm doing.
And be open to feedback. Like you can be in love with your thing, but if you hear 3 times that it's not working, the moment that the 2 conference organizers that I work for, after everybody told me it was cool, were like, well, nobody right now needs the guy that's the networking like facilitator at a conference. I was like, okay, then that can't be my business model.
Right.
That's my customer.
Next.
So
move on.
What else can I do? Yeah.
Right. That's cool. You do podcasts, you do audiobooks, and you do regular books. I'm curious, how do you consume your audio content, or when you consume that content? And then what's your ratio of audiobooks, podcasts, whatever, to traditional hardback stuff? When are you listening?
I walk my dogs in the morning.
Okay, so you're listening
so when I wake up,
dogs
when I wake up, go walk the dogs.
Nice.
Listen. I take a little break when I'm like making breakfast with my wife, and then I finish listening to whatever I'm listening to, and then I start my day.
Nice.
So that's pretty constant. I work from home right now, so if I'm driving anywhere, I always listen to stuff.
Have something set up for that.
Yeah. And my ratio of podcast to audiobooks, it varies. Right?
I mean, just consuming audio content versus old school reading.
Dude, I'm
pages.
like 90 to 95% audio content because it's all about that time arbitrage.
It's easy. Yeah, it just works.
Yeah,
it's convenient.
Yeah.
Well, what I mentioned listening to an audiobook, and then if it just because you can go through so many, and then the ones that really resonate with me, go back and then getting the hard copy, and because I get a lot of different perspective. But then, I was talking to someone about that, and they said, "Well, why don't you try listening to the audiobook and reading it at the same time, and that gives you a whole nother set of perspectives. Like we have time for all that, right?"
Yeah, I mean that sounds awesome, right? Like
in theory,
and I do what you say a lot. Like I love this audiobook. I bought the book. I'm gonna go back and look at it, and I never go back.
Yeah.
most of the time I don't go back and look at it, but I still have it. And for example, right now I'm putting this retreat together next week, and I'm obsessed with this book called Play Bigger about category design and category kings.
Huh.
And what
Play Bigger. Do you know who it's by? Do you remember who it's by?
Yeah, it's 4 people, man. It's like Dave Ramadan and
okay, that's enough. We can find it.
Yeah, Play Bigger. It's awesome, right? So it's the concept of don't be better, be different. So you create your own category. And when you think about like most of the great companies that you can think of, that's what they've done. Apple did it continually.
Yeah.
Apple is a category design company under Jobs. Now, whatever, they're an earphone company, I guess. But if you think about Facebook, if you think about Uber, if you think about, anything that's really hit, they created their own niche as opposed to trying to be Airbnb.
Yeah, great example.
Is perfect. The first one that they talk about is this dude that like in like 1920 was ice fishing on a lake and with like the Inuits, and they realized that the Inuits would catch this fish and throw it on the ice, and then it would freeze the fish. And in that time, there wasn't, to get fresh veggies.
Is it Bluebird?
Yeah.
The Bluebird
Is it Bluebird? I don't know if it's Bluebird. I don't remember the name of the company,
but
but like the guy invented frozen foods, man.
Yeah.
And in order to invent frozen foods, it created this like ecosystem around it of frozen food sections, frozen food transportation, all this stuff. And every company I'm telling you has its own ecosystem. Right. So like it's a great economic driver. And if you apply that personally, right, it's that concept of introducing myself as a professional networker. It's that concept of when I got the title Director of Sustainability, I made that shit up. Right. Like there wasn't, I would go to every green building conference for about 3 years. And then directors of sustainability started popping up, right?
You created a category.
But
awesome.
it's its own category, man.
That's
And that's why I call myself an audience cultivation strategist instead of like a marketer or a content creator or whatever.
Audience cultivation strategist.
Yeah, man. Can't be put in no box. I got to make my own box, You
talked about Gary Vee being a big influence. What other podcasts are you listening to? What other content are you digging on right now? And that could include music for that matter.
All right, then we got to talk about Outkast.
Yeah, I know, right? We had a whole Outkast conversation that first night we met.
You know who's really influenced me a lot in the space of music is Logic.
No kidding. Nice.
I really like Logic, and I really like the stuff that he talks about and the way he puts it. And really, I talked to you about how like the birth of my podcast didn't happen because I wanted to have a podcast as much as because I wanted to copy this thing that Logic and Kanye had done.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. All right, cool.
Yeah, that's a great segue.
Yeah, so that 2019 was just such a trip of a year, man. Like I'm not kidding when I tell you I was like a breath away from divorce, like a breath away from being broke,
We were all
which is stuff that I've never thought that I would in that space. But I ended up on a tear, and it all worked out for me. And I'm like, man, I want to tell this story. So I'm listening to Logic's Young Sinatra 4 album in my car, rolling around, and his last track on that album is called Last Call, and it starts off this like cool jazzy hip hop beat, and he's like, man, ever since I heard this beat, I knew it was gonna be some Last Call shit, and ever since Kanye did it, and I saw J. Cole did it, I want to do one. And what it is because Kanye did this on his first album, which is one of my favorite albums.
Through the Wire.
Yeah, College Dropout's the name of the album.
Oh,
but Through the Wire.
Through the Wire is the hit song.
Through the Wire's in
right,
there,
yeah.
and like It All Falls Down. Like it's got a bunch of jams.
It's got the best one.
It's a great album. And he started this thing, but it's like this like jazzy hip hop beat where he like rapped, and then he talked about the origin of his first record deal for like 5-6 minutes. And then I guess J. Cole did it at some point, and then Logic did this one where he like rapped and talked, and then went into this like motivational speech. And I was like, dude, I'm dying to do this, and I feel like this 2019 year would be a great story to tell. So.
And that was the original seed for a podcast. I got to do that, man.
I mean, no, well, the thing was, if I'm going to do this, I needed to live somewhere. I needed to have, like, because everyone's going to love it and it's going to go viral. So, like,
it's got to be perfect.
Where are they going to get more of Pablo, right? So I'm like, all right, well, I got to release like 6 episodes and then release this thing, and then I can do more episodes. But like, it has to have a receptacle.
Yeah, because it kind of needs to be that last track kind of thing, like that. It can't be the first thing they hear.
Correct.
Right?
I released it on December 31st, and it was my last call of the year, and
That's awesome.
And that was cool, man. So I got the idea, and at first I'm like rapping over Kanye's beat, and then I'm like, how am I going to get this beat? I reached out to like one of my best friends, Billy. He's a musician, and I'm asking him to put it together for me. But he's also like the head of a company. He's
got
also
a real job.
Yeah, he's also the CEO of a tech company.
Just a little bit busy.
Together like a track for me, but it's like kind of like it's too like funky for me. That's too funk, like don't,
It just didn't work.
That wasn't what I had in mind. After like asking him to correct it once, I felt bad doing it again. And so I was like, maybe I'll just do it over Kanye's beat. And then in like December, all of a sudden some dude starts following me on Instagram called Monitor Beats. And I look into it, and it's like this like Russian kid that's putting out cool beats on his Instagram. So I like immediately DM him. I'm like, yo, man.
So crazy how that works, right?
Content, bro, the power of content, right? Like, content is networking on steroids.
Or intent, right?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Power of
intent. Correct. The universe conspires in favor of those following their dreams. That's from The Alchemist.
Beautiful, yeah.
And it's true, man. Like, if you are really in purpose and you're really, like, announcing what you want and seeking what you want, shit comes to you, man. It's not a coincidence.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I love it,
That's
bro.
awesome.
I love it. So I reach out to this guy, and I'm like, this is I send him Kanye's thing. I send him Logic's thing. I sent him, like, a little bit of me rapping over, like, the thing that I had sent my boy Billy. And then I'm like, I think this is the formula. Like, I think it needs to start off with a bass line, then, like, a pedal to hi-hat, then some, like, keys, and then some trumpets, and then, like, cycle down from that, right? Like, it's, like, up and down and up and down.
Take off and, work it through the system.
And he comes up with, like, a first draft in, like, 72 hours. I correct it a couple of times, and it ends up being this, like, sick, like, super cool beat. And then, now I had the beat, and I had, like, a little bit of the rap. So I kept on, like, working on the rap. The rap's, like, a minute, maybe. But it's a 15-minute, like, storytelling.
Yeah, but you still got the storytelling over that.
And then I just booked the studio for December 27th. I was like, I got to show up. I got to spit it. So I just made it happen,
cool.
man. Yeah.
And you did it, dude.
Yeah. It's easily the coolest, most creative thing I've ever done in my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Are any apps, sites that, especially with you, with all the networking that you do, I'm real curious. Anything like, for example, I know Chris was real big on the Meetup app. Mm-hmm. Any technology that you're using that really helps you with what you're doing that people may not be familiar with?
Two things. One is actually three things, right? Like, I think Facebook groups is a really powerful tool. Like, if you get in a Facebook group of like-minded people, and you start posting stuff in there that adds value to people's lives, it has very, very high engagement. We talked about James Van Pruin, the guy that is friends with Chris, that got me into this conference, and I'm rooming with. I've met, because the other guy that I follow is Jesse Itzler.
Nice.
Right? Jesse
alien.
Yeah, another AT alien. Jesse and Gary are my two, like, true norths.
Yeah.
And
I love his Build Your Life Resume concept. That's just such a great program.
So I took that class, and then after that class, you got to be in his, like, private Facebook group. So what I started doing, and I've started doing this on LinkedIn too, which is another tool that I'm using very well, but I use the same mechanism. When I meet with people from Build Your Life Resume, I will meet up with them and then, like, pop out my phone and be like, yo, man, so I just met with James, dude. Like, James is a super awesome connector, and this is what he cares about. And James, tell me this story that you just told me, right? So, like, I make, like, a 2 to 5 minute video about the person that I just met, and then I post it in the group, and I'm like, guys, meet up with this person. He is cool. She is cool.
Like an online, a Facebook version of what you're doing in real life. That's so smart.
And then I started doing that on LinkedIn. When I go to networking events and I connect with people on LinkedIn, I do the same thing, and I put it on LinkedIn, and I tag them, and it's about them.
Beautiful.
So LinkedIn right now is functioning really, really well for, like, growing your platform, because they just went from a place that you can, like, write a little bit and put some links in to a place that you can put in native content. You can put in a video and watch it on LinkedIn. You can put in a blog.
Trying to get more like Facebook and Instagram and all that.
So now the algorithm is incentivized to keep you on there. And they've essentially created these highways for a group of people that are used to riding horse and buggy. So if you put a car in there, it gets everywhere, right? Nice. So, like, if you put in a video about somebody else and tag that person who normally isn't putting video on their profile, all their friends see it.
Yeah.
And then a certain number of their friends are going to be like, oh, dude, my friend's on TV. And then, oh, dude, who's this guy interviewing him? And, oh, this guy's cool.
Gonna follow that guy too. Yeah, because man, and it's funny because essentially you're doing what LinkedIn is designed to do. You're kind of acting like you're kind of being a commercial for LinkedIn. Like, you should be hitting them up probably for some kind of.
Dude, for me, this whole key of the stage thing is not to be the star of the stage. It's to be the stage.
Just,
be the stage hype guy, right?
Yeah.
The kingmaker concept, right? Like, so what you're doing right now of bringing people onto your thing, you're providing people a stage. You're a stage, right? So you're building these great relationships. You're helping other people promote. When this thing comes out, I'm going to share it with my network. Some people are going to be like, oh, I really love this guy, and they're going to start following you. To me, that's the most sustainable win-win-win way of building relationships, scaling your influence. It's by leveraging other audiences, by being the stage.
Well, and that, to me, is the funnest part about this, because there's other aspects of traditional business where it can be very cutthroat and very all about, budgets and restraints and shorting things. And what's so great about all of this stuff that we're doing is it's all creating those win-win situations. It's all about mutually beneficial opportunities, relationships. There is no somebody getting screwed over, and it's just so refreshing, especially like in a pessimistic world at times, for sure.
Yeah.
You've seen this, particularly with podcasting, this stuff has gotten very huge, but even this conference concept is blowing up. What do you think this market looks like in the next 10 years or 10 years from now? How do you think it's going to evolve?
I think that the human experience is going to be more and more emphasized. However that shows up. Are you talking about like the podcasting business or the conference business?
Either one. Or both.
I think right now you and me are talking, and I can be like, yo, man, that's a really cool Under Armour shirt that you got on. And I would not be surprised if right now that I just said that, in an hour, there's going to be an Under Armour ad on my phone while I'm scrolling through Facebook. And that's only going to get worse. Right. So attention is going to be totally commoditized. Demand is totally commoditized.
Yep.
So the only way that you're going to be able to retain customers, the only way you're going to be able to retain employees, because all of a sudden they're like, I don't like my job, they're going to get a million job offers, right? Like in 10 years, it's going to be in your Google Glass. You're looking at something and your pupils dilate and it's going to give you the offer, right? We're not far from that, man, So I think everything is driving towards, if you want to win, you got to figure out a way to build community around whatever you're doing. And it's not a new concept, man. Like Harley Davidson, if you have a Harley and you go out get another bike, guess what? You lose all your friends. Right? It's not a new concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
But back then, that took millions and millions of dollars of branding to make that stuff happen. Nowadays, it's pretty easy to do at a low cost as long as you have the good footprint and the good plan.
And it gets even more and more niche now, too. Like you can go so deep into it now, particularly with podcasts. Like some of the people I've talked to, the podcasts that they're doing, I mean, they are so deep. I mean, it's a subgenre of a subgenre of a subgenre. Yeah. I'm like, whoa, that's, you're down a wormhole, but yet, it works though. There's an audience for it.
And because of the internet and because of the connectivity of things, you can find 10,000 people that are really into the smallest subgenre ever. And if you have 10,000 people and you get $100 from each of them, guess what? You're making $1 million a year.
There you go.
Right? Yeah. So I think it's going to go more towards this. I think it's going to go more towards the build out an audience that's passionate about your thing, that can be a community and bring them together, and you monetize that, because that's what people care about, man. Like, I don't know if I've talked to you about this, right? But like my brother passed away 5 years ago, and the big aha moment for me in this journey, and I'm now realizing, like very recently have I realized how influential it was in exactly what I'm doing right now. But 1,200 people showed up to his funeral, man.
Wow.
And that moment of having 1,200 people at his funeral was so fulfilling to my family. That is how religion has grown throughout the world. They are the meeting point that is a community, and it's the most powerful organizations in the world are these like religious organizations, right? Like the Mormon Church. Yeah. Like all of this stuff this model has been around in our face forever in the form of organized religion. Why can't you do that as a business that really gives a shit?
Right.
So.
Well, and that's how they started, because the business of giving a shit was the concept of organized religion at some point.
Correct. That's the business of giving a shit, but it's a business.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So
do you consider yourself to be a night owl or early bird?
Early bird.
Are you?
Yeah. I like to surf, bro. I get up
even
early.
though no kids and stuff, you like to hit it pretty
early. Dude, I worked in construction for 15 years.
Oh yeah, so you're used to. So again, right down my same vein. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if I was an early bird before that, but like 15 years of construction, and you're getting up at 5 to go open up the warehouse at 6, so guys can get on the trucks and they can be on the job site at 7.
Your day's half over by 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
I was asking you about what you thought was going to be big in the conference world, podcast world. If everything goes right for Pablo, what's 10 years look like for you? Everything goes according to plan.
If everything goes according to plan, man, I'm a $50,000 a pop public speaker that is speaking around the world, and I can pick out 10 different places that I want to speak at, and then everything else is just all about being of service and helping people. And I'll have my own event, and I'll have my own thing. And if everything goes right in 10 years, I'm Pablo G, like Gary Vee, right? Like right.
Nate G, baby.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I just threw all my category king thing out the window, and I was like, no, I just want his category. But
Right.
but
It's easy to do watching him. Yeah.
yeah, man. But that's it, dude. I never, ever thought that it was feasible to be like a Tony Robbins character. But when I think about my life, all I care about is how I can make people feel. I think my superpower is that I see something fascinating in everybody that I meet. And because I'm a really good communicator, I can be like, oh, this is what's awesome about this person. And then I go and tell everybody. There's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that is, every man I meet is in some way my superior, and in that I can learn from him.
Yes.
Everybody that you talk to, everybody who you listener, the person listening right now, because you have walked through a unique path, nobody has had your life. So there is at least one lesson in your life that nobody else has learned. And if you can just figure out that one thing and tell as many people as possible, then you are serving the world in the purpose that you need to be in, man. And I want people to really, really understand that we're growing as a population at a massive rate, and cities are going to be huge. And if we can't make people understand the value of the other as opposed to the fear of the other,
Right.
then we're in trouble, man.
Yeah.
So I really want to solve that problem. I want people to go around thinking that people that are different than them are an asset, not a liability.
So in that same vein, what's the story that you want to be remembered for?
I would love to have a big turnout at my funeral too, right? Like, again, biting it from Gary Vee and my brother, so I'm not being very unique here.
Right.
Listen, man.
But that's a shared feeling, though, for a lot of people.
I want the story to be, this is the guy that proved that the other is more valuable than it is a liability, and that I want to be around people, not people get off my lawn.
Nice.
That community creation is the future of business development. That's my story.
So one of the questions I usually ask people is, if you had a podcast, who would you have on? But
Yeah.
since you've had a podcast and you've had some really cool guests, what's the future with the podcast? What do you hope to do with that? Or if you could get anybody on there, besides of course, like the Gary Vees and some of the Jesse Itzlers, that's too easy, but maybe going a little deeper. Who are some of the people that you're chasing down, going after, that, looking into, inspiring you?
I think we talked about this the other day, but like, I'm really more motivated by putting the Nates of the world on my podcast. Like you, I am more motivated by putting on people that seem ordinarily and make him look extraordinary, because everybody has something extraordinary in him, than I am by, maybe not than by getting Gary Vee on, but then I
still take Gary Vee,
but then I am then like getting, I don't know, bro, like Big Boy or Andre, right? Like Outkast. I would love to hang with those guys, but like I'm really more motivated in people understanding that each and every person around them is a source of benefit to them.
They got something to offer too.
Than these like unattainable people, right?
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
like normalizing that stuff.
Right in my wheelhouse, man.
Yeah,
for sure.
But that being said, yeah, bro, I would love to have Andre and Big Boy on.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
I've been secretly stalking Big Boy for a minute,
I
so
love Big Boy, bro. Dude,
I'm not sure what Andre's
did you hear
up to.
Boomerverse's latest album? I think that album is as good as any Outkast album.
Yeah,
like,
and
I think that album is on par with AT Aliens and Aquemini, man, which I don't say about anything.
Right?
Like,
Well,
I'm so impressed by Big Boy.
It's funny. I've had that conversation with Speech from Arrested Development, because they put out a free album and a regular traditional album both in 2019. And I'm a fan, but I didn't even realize that, dude. And I went and listened because I was getting ready for the interview, and I wanted to kind of get up to speed. And dude, I couldn't believe how come, like, man. And what's so awful is because we're so saturated with information and content nowadays. It's like I didn't even know that it existed until I took the time and effort to go seek it out.
I
man.
can't wait to hear the new Arrested Development album. Now you just said that.
Oh,
that
dude,
sounds
yeah,
awesome.
check it. And like I said, one of them's completely free. Like, it's free download, and it's probably better than the one that's paid, to be honest with you.
Epic.
But yeah, it's really cool. But the follow-up question to that is one, I guess it's, again, kind of being that we're in the same vein to a certain extent, who do you think would be good for this podcast?
Who do I think would be good for this podcast?
Since we're at this conference and we're booking guests while we're here, anybody here you want me to snag, or I can snag?
I got a bunch of dudes to introduce you to, man. Like, I think, by the way, I also want to go back and say another guy that I really follow is Justin Schenck and the Growth Now Movement podcast.
I'm not sure. What was
He's here, and he's awesome.
I'm not sure that I'm familiar with him.
It's an amazing podcast, right? Like, he brings on, like, really amazing people focusing on, like, the biggest moments of growth in their life, and he's a really incredible interviewer.
What's his name again?
Justin Schenck, Growth Now Movement.
Schenck.
And that's,
Okay,
by the
Growth
way,
Now Movement.
the only conference that I have left on my calendar for this year, for the time being, is his, the Growth Now Movement Live Conference. So I would
Where's
love
that?
It's in Reading, Pennsylvania, so just outside of Philly.
I might have to check that out.
Yeah.
When is it?
It's May 12th-ish.
Okay, so not too far.
Dude, I would love if you came. I would love anybody that's here that wants to meet me. Like, that's the spot, right? Unless you want to come to Jacksonville and come surf with me, which I'm down.
Yeah. Hey, dude, I'm way more down for surfing at Jacksonville than about anything.
Dude, let's do both.
Always down for that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we should. Absolutely need to do better.
Yeah. So
Other
people for your
because of
podcast,
this, yeah.
I think Justin Schenk would be awesome. I don't know how easy that would be to get, but I've got a buddy called Nathan Ruff. He saw this business model in China of kind of like the Bird scooters, but for cell phone charging. So it's like these power bricks that live in these like little kiosks that are only about the size of a backpack, connected by an app that when your phone's running out of battery, you just scan the thing, the power brick pops out, you plug it in, you can walk around so you don't have to like leave your phone in a locker.
Right. You take it with you and then return it when you're done.
And you can return it anywhere, right? For $1 an hour or buy the thing or whatever. It's a
Brilliant.
super amazing thing. And the guy so he's like 25 years old. His like 3 goals in life are to, number 1, create $1 billion worth of like value to the world. 2, make sure that everybody in the world has potable drinking water.
Nice.
And 3, be president in 2052. And he's a beast, bro. He's going to do it. I think he'd be an awesome guest.
Yeah, that sounds like
I'd love to introduce you to him. Yeah.
Him
And this company's called Rabbit. So they launched in Nashville, then they launched in Atlanta, and they launched in Miami now. And now they're like in the middle of fundraising. Everywhere that we've launched, so he's one of my clients, and I advise him and whatever. Everywhere that we've launched, we're getting a ton of press coverage. Like, we launched in Miami, and all my friends reached out like, bro, this is what you're working on? I'm like, yeah, dog.
Nice. That's awesome. That's amazing.
I think he'd be awesome, man. I met this guy at a conference early last year, and he's like 24 years old when I meet him and has like $1.5 million like web design company. And the guy was like, throughout that whole like growth period of my life, just giving me amazing advice on like my marriage and my business. And I'm like, who is this guy? He's the man.
Great.
Yeah, I think he'd be great.
Anybody that's been a mentor for you? Had a big influence on you?
My dad, bro. Like, I'm a very fortunate person in the sense that I got raised in like a really amazing family. And I never,
so blessed for that.
And my dad, now that I see it, because he's my last episode that I've put out on my podcast.
Nice.
And I didn't realize that my dad has like built $100 million plus companies 4 different times. Like, I never really realized that.
Wow.
And I never realized how like rare that is. And he's done it across different continents.
No kidding.
And he's a guy.
What was his, what did he do? Like, is there any particular area of expertise, or was he in a couple of different things?
It's evolved, right? Like, so my dad moved from Cuba to Miami when he was like 15, right? Like, left Cuba during the revolution, showed up with his family, like nothing, not $1 to their name.
Right,
like overnight had to leave.
Classic immigrant story.
Classic Cuban immigrant story. Goes to UF, graduates from UF with a degree in engineering, starts working for IBM in Venezuela, where he meets my mom, and then he gets hired by this Cisneros group, which like the Cisneros are like one of the richest families in the world. They're Venezuelan, and he works his way up with them to be their like operator. And they start doing leverage buyout in like the late 70s, early 80s before anybody was doing leverage buyout, right? Like buying a company at like a low valuation and like financing it because you know that you can raise the value of the company really quickly and then sell it. And he does that in the Bay Area during the early days of Silicon Valley and Miami and a couple things. And then we move to Spain, where they buy a retail department store, like a high-end department store that they buy for like $4 million and sold for like $140 million in like 4 years.
Wow.
But don't cut him off anything. So he's like, well, I'm out with you guys. If I'm just like your employee, like I've done too much here. Right. So then he moves back to Miami. He goes into a couple of different endeavors. And then he ends up creating the biggest value-add tech distribution company in Latin America, which he then sells to like another huge Latin American conglomerate, comes on board, and then resells that to somebody else. And then buys into another one, fails at like late 60s. This is when my brother's struggling with pancreatic cancer and passing away. So like he has his biggest loss in business and loses a significant portion of his net worth, of his retirement,
sure.
Late in life as my brother passes away and gets really depressed. And then my cousin, who's a fucking superstar, he at some point leaves Venezuela. He graduates medical school in Venezuela and moves to Madrid in 2011. And she's doing his residency in geriatrics. 9 months in, decides that the bar downstairs is shutting down because of the economic crisis in Spain is affecting it a certain way, and they can't do it. So he buys the lease and starts a little burger bar in Madrid because he can't get a good burger. Ends up growing this thing.
Coming from Argentina. Right?
Going from Venezuela.
Venezuela, rather. I'm sorry.
So he It's funny because Latin Americans, we all make fun of each other's countries. So calling me
that's
Argentinian.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sorry.
So,
The Mexican. No.
yeah, exactly. Gonzales.
Gonzales.
So he's a beast of an entrepreneur. He in like 3 or 4 years grows it to 9 locations in Madrid and 3 franchises. And brings his dad from Venezuela to help him like really scale this thing. And his dad shows
McDonald's of Spain kind of thing.
Well, like the Shake Shack or like the
sure.
more like a high end burger place.
Nice.
And his dad moves out there, and 3 months in goes to a doctor. Doctor's like, bro, take these tests. You look funny. 9 days later, dies. And my cousin's left like, dude, what am I gonna do? Calls up my dad. And he's like, Bert, I don't have anybody else for help with this. And I'm like, I've got this thing and I'm trying to figure it out. My dad's like, dude, leave me alone. Leave me to die. Right? Like at this point, I think my dad only has a couple years left in his life because he's so depressed and he's old. And he's still old, by the way. I love making fun of him for being old. And Andoni's like, bullshit. Gets on a plane, shows up at my dad's kitchen table, opens up his books, and my dad at first doesn't believe it. So he calls the bank and he verifies the numbers. He looks at my cousin and goes, Andoni, if you want to like open like 2 to 3, because he's opened all these up just based on the cash flow of his existing businesses.
Just cash flowing them, basically.
Right? And he's like, if you want to just keep doing this and build a nice little life for yourself and have 50 locations in the next like 10 years, 20 years and have a really nice business, you can and you don't need me. But if you want to grow 100 of these in the next 5 years and sell this thing for 80 million euros, here's your homework. Come back to me in a month. Andoni goes back to Spain, does the homework, comes back, cuts a deal with my dad to like set this thing off. They go off, create this like 80 million euro company in 5 years. In a year and a half, they exit for 150 million euros.
Wow.
Yeah, so so my dad's evolved through all this stuff, and now he's getting a phone call from every like young entrepreneur, like restaurateur that wants to like hit it big. He's like, hey man, help me, and he's like, well, here's your homework, and if I want to work with you, I'm gonna take a piece.
Beautiful.
So my dad's just a beast, bro, and he's like the coolest. Do you watch the Dan Le Batard show? You know, like
oh yeah, sure.
My dad's like Poppy,
but
for business, like
awesome.
legit.
That's
yeah. He'd be an awesome guy.
So
on the podcast.
I was gonna say I'd love to get him on the podcast. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, he's the man,
awesome.
bro. He's super funny.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you totally took me off on a different direction.
Man. Anyways, he's just the greatest mentor ever, man.
That's great.
And he's a super high integrity guy that has always very healthy relationship.
Well, and isn't it great to have somebody like I have my dad on my podcast, one of my most popular episodes actually.
Yeah.
But it's so awesome to be able to have, even just knowing that you have that to lean on, to go to bounce off of. And I mean, even though they don't necessarily think, I mean, they're still old school. They have an old school way of thinking on certain things. It's great to know that you can get that old school perspective.
Yeah.
Because like, again, like with people passing, I had a good friend that kind of passed kind of slowly because he was a little bit older, but he was, again, one of those mentor type figures. You realize we're losing some of those guys, and, they're not always going to be around. And, like my dad's getting older or whatever. So it's like, I'm grateful to have access to that,
So I think intergenerational relationships are the key to a well-functioning society.
Critical,
right? Because all we do is we go through cycles. There's this theory, I have to talk about this because I'm obsessed with this concept. This 11th century Islamic scholar puts out this theory that human nature goes in these cycles of 4. And it corresponds to 4 generations. The first generation is like a world in chaos, and they need these revolutionaries to go through this big struggle and lead the way to establish a new world order. The next generation is so marked by that struggle that all they want to look for is let's all agree on stuff. Let's all figure out how to get along.
Yeah.
Next generation is so removed from that struggle and so used to getting along that's like, I need to get mine, right? Like, what's the point of these societal norms? I want to like get paid.
Right? Selfish, narcissistic.
And then the fourth generation is like, we've lost our way. What are we doing? We need to like reinvent things, and boom, a revolution starts again. Right. And it's very clear to me that we're in that fourth scenario right now.
So it seems that way in a lot of scenarios.
And because it's all cyclical, it doesn't have to be a revolution. Like, we don't have to burn down the government and start a new one. We just got to realize, okay, what's changed? Now,
well, yeah, because now it seems more like social revolution. Like this.
Well, what's changed is the internet has taken away the gatekeepers of communication. So now we can communicate at scale, and we got to figure out the new norms for that. Every other generation before that has been through a struggle like this, and if we can learn from the people that have been through that past cycle, then we don't have to relearn the same lessons. We just have to recontextualize those lessons to what's happening, and we can solve a lot of pain from happening.
Make that cycle a little easier.
Make that cycle,
a little easier to bear.
Reduce the pain, bro.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know. So like, I think and again, this is another thing that when I go to church, that's the place that I see like grandfather and cousins, and you see multi-generational people kind of like hanging out, right? So that's another.
And not only that too, but you also get these opportunities, because I'm a big believer because of having a bunch of kids, like it takes a village.
It takes a village.
And it's the same concept. You need an old guy influencing that teenage boy, just like you need a young lady influencing that teenage boy, or teenage girl, or whatever.
Or you need influence from a young girl too, so that you have that perspective as well.
Exactly. And the more you get all those different perspectives, the more rounded you're going to be, the more empathetic you're going to be to a lot of different situations.
Yeah, and because you and me are in this age, we have the responsibility to have relationships with people 1 or 2 generations younger than us, and relationships with people 1 or 2 generations older than us, so that we can connect those dots.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. I think it was Jim Rohn talks about you should have a mentor or two, but you should also be actively looking for mentoree. Like you should also be a mentor to somebody. You should always have both of those dynamics going on.
100%.
Yeah. All right, so a little fun thing. What's one item under $100 that you could not live without, that you use on a regular basis?
I'm such a minimalist, man. My reusable water bottle.
Yeah.
I drink.
It's got a bunch of stickers on it. What do you got on there?
Yeah. I'm like the person that if I.
Is that a Yeti? Is that which one it is?
This is a Yeti.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And
So-
an old school one too at that.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Nice.
I drink a ton of water, and I think that's where a lot of my energy and a lot of my like I look good, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right?
I think water is really, really good for you.
Absolutely.
And I'm always drinking water, and I also think plastic is the devil. So without a reusable water bottle, man, like I just wouldn't be able to function. Like I'm always drinking water, and I don't want to be throwing away plastic all the time.
Perfect answer, man. That's a great answer. Well, and all this travel too and doing what we're doing, I mean, it's easy to
Travel
get
dehydrates you.
dehydrated.
Yeah.
I've been trying to play catch up for the last 48 hours. What's your favorite book or book you've given away the most?
The book I've given away the most is The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. And that's kind of the book that it's the new psychology of love from the 70s that is – it essentially teaches you how to understand the difference between love, discipline, serendipity, and faith. And that's my book that when I'm like down and out, I go to the woodshed on that book, right?
Like that's the reset.
Yeah, and that's what I give to people when I know that they're going through a hard time or they're trying to figure something out like that. Outside of that, business-wise, I like Never Split the Difference a lot. Really practical negotiating advice by an FBI hostage negotiator that I've used these concepts to like talk to my wife better.
Negotiating with terrorists, same difference. Right?
I didn't say that about my wife.
I know what you're talking about. All right, what's something weird, odd, or different about you compared to most other people, other than your ability to vivaciously have conversations with a total stranger? Because that's your gift. So what's something else besides that?
Is it my like weird big poofy nipples? Can I say that? Really self-conscious about them.
We have that same problem too.
Yeah. I knew it. I'm just kidding, bro.
And probably for the same reason too.
Man, I want to give you a better answer than that, but
that's cool, man. I'll take it. I'll take it. All right, so as we wrap up, I always want to give everybody a chance to plug all their social media, all that kind of stuff. But I also do want to, I don't know if you're involved with any charitable organizations or any causes, but I want to give you a chance to plug anything like that, how people can find you.
Yeah, man. I was on the board of multiple charities in Miami, right? So
I was gonna say you're a philanthropist kind of at heart.
Yeah, right now the ones that I'm most involved in are Best Buddies in Jacksonville that are focused on reducing the mental, economical isolation of people with intellectual developmental disabilities. So it gives people that have intellectual developmental disabilities a friend, and that creates community for them, and then that integrates them into society, because usually when people
interact more, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and they flourish better, and more importantly, so what they do is they pair like middle schoolers and high schoolers and college students with people with intellectual developmental disabilities. And I don't know if you know anybody with an intellectual developmental disability, but like these are kids.
My daughter has Down syndrome.
For real? Yeah. So, and I bet you she's the most inspirational figure in your life.
Absolutely, without question.
Right? And these families that have had this decision to make, right? Like they knew that they were going to bring a child into the world, and they knew that financially it was going to be really difficult, and like all this stuff. They end up being such incredible families, right? Like they're like very purpose driven and very positive and all this stuff. So I think putting a middle schooler, high schooler, college person paired to that perspective is really making the world a really better place.
That's awesome.
So I'm very involved with Best Buddies Jacksonville.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And social media. What do you have a preferred? Because you said you've really dove pretty deep into LinkedIn. That seems to be like pretty good. But what's your preferred social media?
I love LinkedIn, but it's hard to find me on LinkedIn because my name is Pablo Gonzales.
And then, Gonzales.
So my Instagram is Connect with Pablo. My YouTube channel is Connect with Pablo, where I have networking tips and tricks. But I haven't really I have my networking tips and tricks on there, and I haven't really paid much mind to it apart from that, but they're very valuable. My website is Connect with Pablo. My email address is youshould@connectwithpablo.com.
Nice. So brilliant.
So,
I love it.
So Connect with Pablo, bro.
Connect with Pablo.
Oh, and my podcast, Chief Executive Connector.
The reason why we're here.
Episode 7,
Yes.
2019, last call, bro. Please check it out. Listen,
if
make
you
fun of my
wanna
rap.
take it, but hey, man, it's been an absolute honor to meet you. Been such a good time, and man, I'm really excited about some opportunities with us in the future.
I'm pumped to be friends, man.
All right,
thank
brother.
you for honoring me with your stage. It means a lot to me, man.
Until the next one.
Yeah,
Take
bro.
care, bud.
All right.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for listening. So, what'd you think? What did I miss? Was there a topic you wish we had covered? Was there an area of discussion you want to know more about? Or was the whole thing just too long? Please send us your questions and feedback on social media to @extraordinarypodcast or check out our website, extraordinarypodcast.net. Subscribe there for all the latest episodes, blog posts, and more. And if you're tired of living the same old ordinary life, shoot me an email, nate@extraordinarypodcast.net, and I will send you your own customizable blueprint that will walk you through step by step how to create your own extraordinary life. And if you or someone you know already fits the profile, you can submit a request to be interviewed on the website as well. Finally, if you like what you heard or learned today, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and follow the Extraordinary Podcast on all your favorite platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. And if you feel inspired, show your support for the show by donating through Patreon. It is through this financial support that we are able to continue to bring to light ordinary people living extraordinary lives. Thank you for your support, and most of all, just being you. This is Nate G, and we'll see you next week.